Hi, and welcome to today's Together podcast solo episode with me, Courtney Wren. We are going to dive into frustrated with an avoidant partner who pulls away, understand why, and how to invite real connection. And so we're going to dive into why compassion and understanding is the key to dancing with an avoidant partner, how knowing what leads to avoidance, more avoidance versus actual connection, and ways that you can invite your partner in. And then stick around because as a bonus, I want to address that sticky place that so many people feel when they have a partner who's avoidant. And I hear it all the time is, but why do I have to do all the work? And that can be a feeling that can come up for partners when their partner is avoidant. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about how I frame that for myself and how I work with it and how I find my right place. What is mine to work with and what's not. So let's dive in. And this episode, I'm laughing to myself because I in a way, I am the best person to be here talking to you because I come from the side that was terrible and has been terrible at relating with people who have avoidant attachment. I have regularly done exactly the wrong thing over and over when I've been relating with people who are avoidant. Not knowing it, not even necessarily always having the language for that they had avoidant attachment, but realizing as I'm diving deeper and deeper into this and getting better and better at relating with avoidance, how bad I've been at it. And that's okay. That's okay. I'm having a lot of love, a lot of kindness for myself, but it means that I'm coming to you really having traveled the spectrum of what happens when we don't handle it well and what is possible when we actually get really good at how to relate with avoidance. And I just want to orient that those of you listening, you yourself might be the avoidant partner. And this episode is also going to be helpful for you because it's going to give you words and understanding for what you need in relationship and maybe even ways to explain to your partner or get them to listen to the podcast episode about what it is you're needing to come into connection. And the other thing I want to say is that many of us, even if we aren't fully avoidant, or if our partner isn't fully avoidant, we can have parts of us that can be avoidant. So for example, I can go very avoidant around money. So what I'm going to talk about today would apply to anyone relating with me about money, but not to do with other things. And so this can also apply to how we relate with ourselves inside with the parts of us that can be avoidant. And so, it's yeah, listen back to some of our other podcasts where we really dive into the different attachment styles. And in this one, I just really want to get right in there with avoidance. And, first I want to name when we're relating with someone who has avoidant attachment, it can be extremely frustrating. It can feel really lonely. It can feel like we work up the courage to move towards, to share our feelings, to reach out and ask for connection, to open up and be seen. And that no matter what we do, the avoidant partner, the other person, comes up with an excuse not to relate. They're really busy. It doesn't really land. They pull away more. That's a very classic thing when we're relating with avoidance and when we're not having the right ingredients, is that the avoidant partner will actually move away more and more and more, or even just over time, right? We can fall in love with a partner and at first it's beautiful and there's lots of those bonding hormones and we feel close. And then over time, the avoidant person starts to want more and more space, more and more autonomy, wants to, have more and more time alone. And, recently I actually had a client in here and he described avoidance very well. He said, basically, I love my partner very much until she's in the room. When I'm alone, I can feel love, And when, people come close, that's when I feel distress. And so the key to relating with avoidance is, first of all, we have to have compassion and understanding of what's actually happening. And for many of us, we haven't really had that fully. And I know I didn't have a proper orientation. And partly why we don't fully have a clear orientation is that the trickiest part of when someone has avoidant attachment or avoidant parts is that the avoidant part or the avoidance itself, that person doesn't fully know what's happening. And that's part of why it's so frustrating. Because when we're relating with someone who has avoidance, the avoidant person, the nature of their trauma, their attachment trauma, that they may know about, but many actually fully don't. They aren't even able to say, oh, that's what happened to me as a kid, which also makes it hard to discern, is that they didn't get enough connection consistently. And in many cases, it was a total lack of connection, or just drop in the bucket for it to fully land in them that they need connection, or to even know that connection could be resourcing, that connection could actually bring them into more health, more vibrancy, more can help life feel even better. They didn't get enough connection for that to land in them. So, for example, when we have secure attachment, we know that if we're in distress or, as we're going through life, that when we move towards connection, when we reach out for help, when we get a hug, when we share about something, when we, eat a meal together, that it can lift us up. It can make us feel good. We co-regulate in our ventral vagal, that healthy social part of our nervous system comes line, and we can feel really good. And we know that because we've had enough experiences of being around people and it being good and feeling good and bringing us more into life. And even though challenges can come up in relationship, there's a deep knowing in the body that relationship is good for us. But if we didn't get enough connection, and I was talking about me with money, I didn't get barely any connection at all growing up around money, at all, almost. And so, I then in my wiring, right, I haven't even known, it's just been a total blank in my system. I didn't know that I needed to talk to people about money. I didn't know that I wasn't talking to people about money. I didn't even know there was something I wasn't doing around money that other people were doing, because it was just so blank. I was relating with money, in myself, but hadn't built a capacity to relate with others or to know what that would be like, but then also didn't even know that that was a block. And that's the key part of avoidance that I want you to understand about an avoidant partner. And is that they don't know fully, depending on how much work they've done on themselves, but for the most part, they don't really get that they're not, like, they don't fully know that there is a way they could be connecting more, or there is a way that connection could be more resourcing, or that they don't even fully know that they are withdrawing or that they are avoiding. And because they weren't connected with enough for them to know the difference, to know, oh, this is the difference. And the thing that's really tricky when you're relating with avoidance is that the avoidant person often will report that they feel really good when they're in the avoidance and when they are in the withdrawal. And this is because when we have avoidant attachment, we have developed a strong capacity for automatic regulation, which means when we were little, we had to learn how to regulate without enough co-regulation and other ways of social regulation. So we're leaning into a part of our nervous system that had to kick in more. and do of the lot of the regulation work, which is helping create regulation just automatically through being, often it's through being busy, being distracted, getting hyper focused in their own world, having a project that they hyper focus on. And in a way, it's a bit of a numbing. When people are in avoidance, there's numbing and layers of dissociation, and then the automatic regulation, which means basically that they can feel good, and there isn't a sense or a feeling of distress that makes them like there is with anxious, or even with secure. With secure, you'll get to a point where it's like, I need to go have some connection. And with avoidance, there'll be a lot of inner, messages to need connection that then moves us towards connection. But with the avoidance, that instinct, that feeling isn't necessarily being felt, isn't there. It is there somewhere inside, but it's numb, it's shut down. The body, the brain has decided there's no point in us listening to that signal because it's not available. And in a way, if they start to become aware of their need for connection, then they have to start to touch on the pain that was there of neglect, of not being met enough. And again, the thing that can be confusing for the partner relating with an avoidant partner, and the thing that's confusing for the avoidant partner, is are these parents that have, neglected emotionally or relationally. They could be beautiful, loving parents who had beautiful intention, but because of their own trauma, their own numbness, their own shutdownness, their own limitation relationally, they weren't moving towards to really connect and really be present with, and to really attune to the child and what the child was needing. And so what can happen is that we can have beautiful parents that were loving and that had good intention. And so and so people say, oh, well, did you have a lot of trauma in your childhood? Well, no. There can also be like a lot of reports of, no, my childhood was good. But again, it's because the hardest trauma to process and digest is actually neglect. Because neglect is the absence of something that we needed. And when something that we needed was absent, especially when we're little, we now don't even know that we needed it because we never had it. So it's sort of like a blankness in the person's system, as opposed to trauma, where something mean happened to us and we have a memory of it, that will stand out as like, yeah, this thing happened to me. But with neglect, it's just sort of like a numb, blank place. And so your partner, a very common thing when I'm working with people and they're trying to sort out how to relate with their avoidant partner, one of the things that they're saying is, but my partner says that they had a good childhood, and, they say that they feel really good. And they say that, they feel like there wasn't a lot of hurt in their home. But the question is, right, where we start to get to know if there is avoidance there, and what we know that means about the qualities in their childhood is, are they able to reach out for help when they need help? Are they able to share emotionally when they need to share emotionally? Are they able to connect and attune and meet you in those places? Are they able to repair? Are they able to receive your emotions? And the other thing is really watching, but in their family of origin, what do you see when you watch them? Are they in their family of origin? Do they connect around emotions? Do they connect intimately? Are they able to really meet each other in the more vulnerable terrain? Are they able to share about difficult things, And this is the one big key. Are their parents or their family members able to respond to their needs? Because this is one of the biggest things to understand about avoidance is, when we're little, it's through our emotions, it's through showing what we're needing and wanting and desiring, and our parent attuning to us and then wanting to meet our needs, that we learn that being vulnerable, moving towards connection and showing what's happening for us inside and reaching out for support and connection in that place actually helps our needs get met and helps us feel better. And then that's where we learn about the relational feedback loop of, oh, this is why it's helpful to move towards connection, because then the people around me, my caregivers, learn about me and they respond and they meet my needs. And then I feel better. And then I feel more myself. And then I come alive more. And then my parents learn more about what I need and they gain and grow in their capacity to give me what I need. And it's this beautiful feedback loop. But if that didn't happen, what happens is for avoidance is they can learn nobody's going to meet those needs. Maybe like their basic needs will be met, but the deeper need to be attuned with, to be seen, to be emotionally met is not getting met. And so they actually stop revealing that. They stop reaching for it. And inside, there's a very strong feeling of what's the point, right? And so obviously this is where it can be so painful when we're relating with avoidance, because not only will they be doing that with themselves, but they're also doing it with us, with their partners. They're also then, having a hard time receiving their partner's emotions, or maybe even not even knowing, like thinking that that's irrational or what's the point, or you're just wanting to bring distress into our life, they'll have a really hard time understanding that it's their job to meet their partner's need and to receive their partner's emotions, and that doing so could actually bring more connection, right? They won't know that. They'll think inevitably if their partner moves towards them and wants, to share their emotions, is just going to lead to more distress. They don't know that it can lead to a better and better life, more and more connection. They don't know that. Yeah. And so I'm going to pause for a moment and I'm just going to go into a little bit of sharing. When I met Mike, it's interesting because when we first met, he was more avoidant, or no, sorry, he was more anxious and I was more avoidant. But as we settled into the relationship, then it flopped and he ended up having a lot more avoidant traits than me. And what I would say is there are lots of women that are also avoidant, and there's a high percentage of men that are avoidant. Even just in the, there can be our attachment style or avoidant attachment style, which is where it's our main way of relating. But there can also be, a quality of avoidance that unfortunately has happened for a lot of men, where they don't know what they're feeling. They don't know what they're needing. And because none of that was received by our society, by their families, by the people around them, now there is layers of avoidance, avoiding revealing themselves, avoiding sharing what's really happening for them, avoiding connecting because they don't know. And so I've been on a huge journey with Mike, and it was so painful, when we first got together, as we dropped into the relationship, because there was this period, I remember it. It was a few years in. Of course, our relationship was shaped a little bit because I had a baby not that long into our relationship. I think it was a year and a half in. And so then we were just in that, right? And then I think it was like when our son was about a year old, maybe a year and a half. The avoidant qualities in Mike started to come out more, and he started to, hang out in his office a lot more. He started to really feel like us spending time alone and him having a lot of self-care and doing things on his own and needing lots of space was what was needed, and that was what was going to feel good for a relationship. And there's a part of me that can get behind that. I don't know if you can relate with that. I'm like, yeah, totally. We need self-care. We need space. I like to have my own world. But then there's that feeling you get where you're like, wait a minute, no, this is becoming too much, and where I noticed it with him and I knew it in other relationships is when they start to say things like, so for example, where you are taking lots of space, they are spending a lot of time on their own, but it's almost like they want more space and they need more space and they need more time alone and they need more separation. And it's kind of this snowball that happens with avoidance if we just let it let it unfold and don't do anything about it. You know, and in my past relationship, that was a layer that had happened too, was that they had the avoidance just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, more and more and more and more space, to the point where it's like, well, now we're not really relating intimately, you know? The avoidance kind of took over the togetherness. And the thing that can be tricky in that, you know, and this happened with Mike, this happened with past partners, is the avoidant partner can be very convinced that this is just healthy independence and this is just what they're needing to do to feel good. And part of that, what I had to start to learn at that time when this was happening, because in my belly, I knew this is not going in a good way. Like, we can't just spend more and more and more time apart. And so I started learning about the attachment system more and learning about what was happening more and understanding that this was the key for me, understanding that Mike doesn't know. Inside of him, what he knows is when I'm alone, I felt good. When I move towards Courtney, I'm feeling stressed and things are feeling overwhelming. And oh, the more I do self-care, then I can feel good. Okay, so if I come out and I connect with Courtney a little bit and then I take space, you know, like this is what's happening in the avoidant partner's attachment system. And I know I'm talking about Mike right now, but what I want to, and I'm sort of magnifying a layer. I want to say that it wasn't the whole story, right? But I'm just sharing a layer of what was happening that we were working out. And, you know, for me, I'm going to name what I have done in the past and what I tried doing then. Right? This is the classic thing, is I wanted to, you know, come right towards and try to point out what was happening, right? In a really direct way. And, you know, it's not that that was like totally bad or wrong. There is a place where I did need to name something and bring that into awareness, but I wanted to name it. I wanted to name the truth. I wanted to call it out, but I was also coming from a very fierce place in me that had been so hurt by avoidance in the past. And all the experiences I've had in my life where, because the other person's avoidant, they just keep explaining to me why it's okay for them to avoid more and more and more, and why it's okay that they don't want to hear about my emotions, and why it's okay that they just want to have a simple evening and not have to deal with things, you know? And I knew that that doesn't lead anywhere good. And I'm sure a lot of you know this experience where you know it's not leading anywhere good. And so I would have this fire in me, you know, and I'd move towards with such fire. But like in me, what the story was, and just check out if you can relate to this. For me, the story was, he is moving more and more away from me because you know, from my most insecure parts, it's he doesn't love me anymore. He doesn't really enjoy spending time with me. Maybe I'm not what he thought and he's disappointed and now he doesn't want to be around me a lot. So some version of there's something wrong with me, right? Which really at the root of it for me was from my childhood and feelings of that with my dad, the way that I understood, you know, my dad's avoidance and the way that landed in me. And the way that I made sense of that is there's something wrong with me. But then the other layer was this deep sense of like some part of him is choosing not to relate with me. A part of him is choosing not to want to be intimate. A part of him is choosing to not want to go deeper. A part of him is choosing to move. Like I had this perception that there was choosing in it. um, that brought out this rage of like really believing that that was the kind of relationship that he wanted to have because he was choosing that, you know? Yeah. And the third thing was by this time for me, I knew inside that this wasn't true, but there was still that feeling, and I think a lot of women can relate, where we can almost gaslight ourselves because the person who is avoiding is almost making it like there's something wrong with you. Like when you're noticing the avoidance or you're questioning the avoidance, where they can really put it back on you. You know, I have a client who is struggling with this because, and it's classic, this is a classic setup with avoidance, is that the avoidant feels fine. They feel good. They feel happy in life. Everything's good. And so if you, the partner, are moving towards and saying, hey, I don't feel good. This isn't feeling good. I'm needing something to change. I'm needing to connect more. I'm needing to, the avoidant person can then say, oh, well, that's your problem. That's something that's happening for you because I feel fine. I feel good. You know, that's a you problem. And so, you know, inside of me, what could happen is a feeling of, you know, oh, maybe it is just a me problem, right? Maybe it is just me. I'm too needy. I'm too, you know, is my anxiety, you know, all of that. And I should just be fine with this level of avoidance. I should just be cool with it. You know, that's like the conscious thing to do, is just be totally fine if your partner wants so much space, and you should just be so secure in yourself that you're totally fine. This is sort of a layer, right? That can be alive in the field and in ourselves. And I've watched clients do it where they'll just let their partner go it full on into avoidance because they're like, oh, well, I should just be fine with it, right? And what I want to say is, no, we should not just be fine with it, because relationship is a reciprocity back and forth. It's a relationship. And when we go to our partner and say, I'm not feeling happy, I'm not feeling good, and I'm needing something to change, it's not our partner's job to fix our feelings, but it is their job to care about that, to respond to that, to want to be curious about it, to want to work with us on it, and to understand that this is a relational space that we're co-creating, right? So we know that we are relating with avoidance when the other person says, "Well, that's just your stuff." Because that's not a relational way to work with relationship. And we know we're in secure attachment when we go to a partner and we say, I'm feeling upset, I'm feeling unmet, and they're like, I want to understand that more. Share more what's happening for you. Let's figure this out together. Some version of that, right? But again, I want to circle back to the main point I'm making here is we have to move out of the part of us. And this was the huge shift for me. Was I was so angry and frustrated with the avoidance and hurt by the avoidance and offended by the avoidance. And in this energy of like, I will not let this avoidance get away with this, that I couldn't make sense of what was actually happening for the other person fully. And I wasn't fully able to embody and grasp the empathy of that. And when I started to really understand deeper what was happening for Mike, what was happening for people when they're in avoidance, that they don't know that they're needing connection, and they don't even know that they're avoiding connection. They really believe the avoidance story inside. They don't know. 2, they're numb and not able to feel the pain that's there, not able to feel the dysregulation that's there, not able to feel that they are needing connection and that they are needing to be attuned with, and that they have needs. They don't know that they have needs. This is an important one because they aren't going to be able to say, hey, I'm feeling avoidant right now, and I'm actually really needing connection, but I don't know that I need connection. And so I'm really needing you to come in slowly and come towards me slowly and help me feel connected in a slow way. Like they don't know to say that. Now, if the avoidant person does their work and starts to learn about their attachment and learn about these things, which I hope some of you out there that are listening, that's what you're doing right now, then you can get there. Like for me, Mike got there. He studied avoidance. He learned about what that looked like. He came into an understanding of that so that he could start to orient me more as to what was actually happening. And it was very, very helpful. So he did that work. And there still was and are places where he's in that avoidant place, or it comes in, where I have to be the one that sees it, that notices it, and has that deep compassion and empathy for, oh, Mike's in that place. He's in that place where he's gone too far into the avoidance and he doesn't know that that's where he is. And I need to orient myself to, he's actually in a lot of relational distress and he's actually needing relational connection, but he's not able to move towards it because when he starts to move towards me, he's feeling too much distress. And really like understand, and he doesn't know what's happening. He doesn't know what he needs. And when I can do that, when I can just keep explaining that to myself, it helps me soften the part that's like, oh, that avoidance. It helps it soften. I do find though that is helpful in the sense that it tells me that there's something that needs to happen. There's something I need to do. There's something I need to mobilize around, because the alternate that can happen, and I've seen this in relationships, and I've never been like this. I've always been more the fiery, I'm not going to let this happen. But there are so many relationships where what can happen is the complacency with the avoidance happens. But then what happens is we're actually neglecting our partner. Like if we just let our partner go off into the avoidance land, we're actually recapitulating their trauma and we're hurting the relationship because we're leaving them actually in a state of distress. We're leaving them in a state of relational neglect, and we're not properly attuning to what's happening for them and what's needed in the same way that their parents didn't properly attune or orient or want to move towards. And so if we want to heal the relationship, it's not our job to do all the work, and it's not our job to heal it and fix it for a partner. But in the name of relationship, and in the name of it being a reciprocity, and in the name of being each other's allies, we do need to figure out how to move towards our avoidant partner, how to notice that they're in the avoidance and that it's alive right now. Maybe even getting curious, where is it on the spectrum? Is it, in the middle? Is it not too bad, but a little bit? Or have they gone full on? They're like super in avoidance. And we want to like track that and notice that, and then start to be curious, how do we start to move towards and build connection in that place? And with a deep compassion for, my partner is in distress. They don't know they're in distress, but they're in distress. My partner isn't able to feel what they're needing right now, and they're not able to ask for it. And they also aren't noticing how much we're not connected. And then here's the last piece that I'm going to add to this compassion and empathy. For me, it's been really important to understand that underneath all of the coping strategies and the avoidance and the I'm fine, or, for some of you, it might even be your partner's saying, I just connect with spirit, or I just meditate a lot, or whatever the vehicle for the avoiding, because people can use all kinds of things to avoid without even knowing that that's what they're doing, right? trying to meet all their relational needs through God, for example, while avoiding humans, like human relationship. But what is really key is I have to remind myself that underneath all that avoidance, my partner actually wants connection. That's why they're in the relationship. Because inside, a part of them wants that. They know they want that. There's been moments where they felt connected and it was beautiful and good. And that's the deeper truth inside. And we know that that's the deeper truth too, because all babies, all children, all little ones in their healthy blueprint want connection. We all want connection. We all have a healthy imprint for it. It's just that if it wasn't available in our childhood, we get further and further away from that healthy blueprint, or more and more numb to it. And so it's almost like reassuring ourselves, my partner does want connection. They might just not even know what that looks like, or what that would be like, or what would be needed, right? Yeah. So the next part is knowing what leads to more avoidance versus what leads to more connection. And so the thing to understand is that because the avoidant person isn't aware that they're avoiding, isn't aware that they're in relational distress, and isn't aware that they're actually needing connection to come into more health and vitality and well-being, that connection could help them. If we move right towards someone with avoidance and go right into relating with them and wanting to talk about emotions, wanting to point out what's happening, wanting to deal with things right now, and we go right in like that, they're not going to be able to meet you in that. The avoidance is too big. The numbness is too big. The distress is too big. So we actually have to move towards our avoidant partner as if they're scared. They're scared, they're timid, they're frightened, they don't really know what's happening. We have to move towards them like that. And we also have to move towards them understanding that along with avoidance often comes a lot of shame. And I know this from the part of me that's avoidant around money, is like, oh my God, the amount of shame that I can hit when I try to talk. It's for me, it's when I try to relate with other people, like talk about it, like with Mike, for example. Yeah, like so much shame and crippling shame. I can't talk. I don't even know what words I would say. I can't even, I'll be sitting there and I'll think I need to say something and I can't even say anything. And if Mike makes one like kind of aggressive facial expression or one like quick remark, it could just send me backwards into like such a shame spiral that now I can't relate at all, and then I could withdraw for a long time about it because I'm so timid. So when you're relating with avoidance, there's a lot of shame about the fact that they don't know what they're feeling. There's a lot of shame about the fact that they don't know what to do to help you or to make you feel better. They're in a lot of shame. And so you have to approach them as if this is a person who is feeling overwhelmed. They don't know what to do. They're feeling afraid. They're feeling a lot of shame, even though they aren't saying that, right? They're not necessarily saying that. Your partner might be the partner that shuts down and is really quiet and they just look really timid. Your partner might be the one that's kind of just frozen and blank and numb, and it can feel like, why are you not relating with me? Or your partner could appear very relaxed and nonchalant and I'm fine. Everything's fine with me. My life is great. So these are the different versions of what it could look like. It could also look like I'm just really busy. Like it's not, there isn't anything to do with you. I'm really busy. I got to go do this. I got to go do that. And they've always got a reason of like something else that needs to happen. These are kind of the archetypes of it. But across the board for all of them, what I'm naming is true underneath. And we have to approach all of those different types slowly, with a lot of compassion. And here's a few things not to do that I still can find hard not to do it. And then Mike has to be like, you can't do it that way. And I'm like, oh. So here's the number one. Don't move towards somebody who's really avoidant and say, what are you feeling right now? Or what's happening for you right now? Which for many of us, those would be very healthy things to ask people who aren't in avoidance. That would be great. But when somebody's in avoidance and we ask those things, the avoidant person now feels like they're being asked about something they can't answer and they don't know. They feel shame about that. And then they feel like this is another thing they're going to fail at, and another way that they're going to fail you, and another way that they're going to have to feel shame. And they're going to go into distress. They're going to go into some level of shutdown, defensiveness, anger, flipping it back on you because they don't know. They don't know. And typically they don't even know to say, I don't know. For anybody out there that wants to learn, this would be a great place if you have avoidance to say, I don't know, or that question feels distressing for me. That's very helpful for your partner. But many avoidant people, they don't know to say that. They don't even know that that's part of it. They're just feeling overwhelmed. They're feeling blank. They're feeling the question itself is so intense and scary. And again, they won't necessarily look that way. They could act very nonchalant, but you'll know because they'll get defensive. They'll flip it on you. They'll start to talk about what they're mad at you about, right? Without really hearing what you're asking. And the other thing is you don't want to come at them and just start accusing, right? And pointing out. And the reason is because it's too much too fast. It's too much too fast. They're already in a state of overwhelm. They're already in a state of distress. So if their partner comes towards them and starts naming and accusing and, you're not hanging out with me anymore and I'm not happy in this relationship, that will just send them over the edge more into avoidance. Now they're even more, and my version, right, around money is if Mike criticizes me in any way about money, my throat closes up. I freeze. I lose capacity to think, and I actually can't relate with him. And so and that just happens. That's like, I'm not trying to make that happen. That's what happens. And it's because that's how much I wasn't related with around money and how much I don't know how to do that. And also how much distress there is and shame in the family field and all of that, right? So these are things we don't want to do. It's a very common thing. What I'll watch, like in sessions with couples, is where the person who's trying to call out their avoidant partner, they'll first be like, well, what's happening for you? What are you feeling? Then their partner won't really say anything helpful, or their partner will flip it, or they won't really answer the question. And then the person will start to be like, well, you always do this. This is what you do. You avoid. And they start to do this kind of thing. And inevitably, you're feeding the avoidance story. You're feeding their inner story in their nervous system that relationship is painful, relationship is stressful, that it feels better to be alone, that coming into connection is just more pain. It's not actual connection. And that and I'm going to name one more. This is the story that lives inside the avoidant. They are afraid that they are going to become overwhelmed by the other person's needs. So and that's just because their needs are so have not been met, right? If your needs were not met as a kid in that way, and now somebody is wanting you to meet their needs that way, and your needs have not been met that way, now that avoidant person is going to feel like, I'm going to be crushed and overtaken by my partner's needs. And they feel inundated by it. Their perception is like, you want so much, you demand so much from me. Like, and often they'll say things like that, right? Like, but I give you this and I give you that. And, and it's because there's this underlying feeling all the time of fear of being taken over by their partner's needs. Now, this can be confusing because if you're the partner, often what you're experiencing is, so many of my needs are not being met. And I'm not even telling you my needs. I'm not even coming towards you with my needs because so many needs aren't being met. And then now you're telling me that you feel like I have too many needs, right? And that can feed like this. But if we do that, it's kind of like digging that trench deeper in their brain, is digging that neural connection deeper. I've done this so much. Or another one that you don't want to do is with an avoidant is, if they're really deep in an avoidant moment, like let's say they've gotten triggered or they're feeling overwhelmed or flooded, or they've gone really avoidant in that moment, the worst thing you can do is in that moment when they're flooded, when they're overwhelmed, that being the moment that you try to tell them everything you're feeling. Because they're already past capacity. They already can't take it in. And then now if you start to try to tell them all the things you're feeling and all the ways you're feeling hurt and all the ways, it now is so over and beyond what they can take in. And again, they can't necessarily say that, and they don't necessarily know that. That you are going to end up feeling so hurt because they're not going to be able to receive you. They might get defensive. This is where fighting starts. I just did one of these with Mike in the forest the other day. He got triggered by something. It wasn't to do with me, but he got triggered, and his nervous system just went into a withdrawal. And it was during this beautiful solstice ritual. And I did a few things that were not helpful. One was, he tried to reach out to me in a certain way. He tried to let me know that he was feeling like too much was being expected of him. And what I did is I got a little snippy about that, because I was thinking, like, I went practical in my head. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm doing so much. Like, I went practical, I went snippy, and I didn't pick up on, oh, something's happening for him. And then when he withdrew, I felt hurt. I felt hurt by the withdrawal. I felt enraged because I felt like, oh, great, now here we are in this important moment of a ritual, and instead of us doing it together and being on the same page, he's just taking it for himself. That was like the story in my mind, because I think I've had that so much when I've been relating with avoidance in the past. And then because that was the story I went into, instead of seeing, oh, Mike is in distress, I went into the other story. Then I was angry. I was frustrated. And then as we were walking back through the woods in the dark under the moon and the stars, he moved towards and he said, I'm so sorry. I got flooded. I'm flooded, he said, which is amazing. That's amazing if someone who's in avoidance can say something like that. I'm so sorry. I'm flooded. I withdrew and I wasn't able to meet you. But the mistake that I made was, that's the moment to pause and give space for him to breathe, to come out of it. Instead, I chose that moment as the moment that I was going to tell him everything I was feeling about it, which of course, that's not the right moment. He's telling me he's flooded. He's telling me he's overwhelmed. And clearly I was too, right? This is why this happened, is I was struggling with what was coming up. But that's not helpful. That's not helpful when I come in like that and I just start expecting him to hear everything I'm feeling when he's telling me that he's overwhelmed, or he's showing he's overwhelmed. And so I did figure it out after a few moments of snarkiness. And then we were in silence and we breathed. And as we walked in the quiet and the silence, we got into the vehicle. And then I was, I felt, and I said, I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to meet you in what you were needing there. I can see that my anger got in the way of me being able to really see that you were in distress and were going into withdrawal. And then giving space for him to unwind out of that in his own way. And then knowing that inevitably, at least in our relationship, how we've set it up, is then there will be a moment. It was like an hour later, an hour and a half later, once Cedar was in bed and her 3.5-year-old, then there was space. He was more resourced. And for me, the maturing has been waiting till he's actually more resourced and actually waiting for that. And then sharing, this is what that was like for me. This is what was coming up for me, and sharing slow. And so this is an example of where I'm still learning, but also of how I was able to repair and find a way through. So what is the helpful thing? Okay, so these are all the things that are not helpful. What is helpful? A few things. Number one, if you can move towards your avoidant partner, if you have enough resource on board to do it, move towards them. If you're noticing they're in avoidance, move towards them with the intention to connect, not necessarily to deal with the avoidance. So for example, you can walk into their space and start connecting with them and just talk about something, that they're doing. Maybe they're really busy and they got to get this thing done. Like, go in and start just making some gentle eye contact, standing beside them, not coming on too directly, speaking softly, like, hey, oh, you're working on some stuff in here. Oh yeah. With not a lot of pressure, not asking a lot, just coming in and maybe making a joke, like come in and just start to build some connection first. If you know your partner and they like touch, you could move in. And one of the ones I'll do with Mike is I'll come in and I'll just start touching his body, because I know that he likes that. In the past, I didn't know to do that because it looked like his body was saying, get the fuck away from me. So I've had to learn, go in and like rub his chest, rub his back, rub his arm, gently and without words. How can you go in and rebuild some connection with no pressure, where you're not putting any pressure? And the reason for this is we're wanting to build in the felt sense of that ventral vagal and the connection being good first, before we bring in another layer of pressure. Because the thing with the avoidant person is, when we can actually come in and start to build connection, they'll start to remember that connection feels good. They'll start to remember, oh yeah, I do like connection. Oh yeah, oh, that feels nice. But they need a lot of slowness and gentleness with no pressure first. Okay? It could be playful. It could be, like I said, just touch with no talking. The other thing you can do, because people with avoidance don't, or when they're in an avoidant part, don't know what's happening, you can be a gentle, kind mirror for them of what's happening. So instead of saying, what are you feeling right now? What's happening for you? It would be something like, hey, I notice you look a little bit stressed. Like your face looks tight and your eyes look worried. And it looks like you're maybe feeling stressed. And so again, without pressure, without expectation of them needing to be able to answer that, because what you're actually doing is you're actually going in and starting to give them a relational mirror. And this is the relational mirror they never had. This is the relational mirror that never happened. And so they don't know. So you're going in and what you're doing is very gently offering a mirror. Now in that moment, it'll land somewhere in them. Oh, yeah, maybe I am feeling stressed. Am I feeling stressed? And it might take many moments of them going in that state, and you mirror that back. Hey, I notice that maybe you're feeling distress. And over time, they're going to start to notice I am in stress. Yeah, actually, I wasn't even aware of that, right? Because they didn't have a relational mirror. And so this is going to start to help them become more aware of what's happening for themselves. Mm-hmm. And then the last and that what I actually want to say is that one is the one that will help the avoidance over time shift and change when we get really good at it, at mirroring it back without any expectation, without any judgment. You know, it could even be like, hey, I'm noticing that you're raising your voice and maybe feeling like I'm attacking you. I can see you're looking really stressed. I'm really sorry that you're feeling that. That matters to me. It's just like subtly mirroring back. You know, what is it that they are feeling that you can see, that you can sense, that they're not saying? How can you gently, non-confrontationally mirror it back? And when you have a partner who's avoidant, you're going to need to do that a lot. And you're going to need to catch the moments where you notice that they don't know what's happening. They don't know what they feel. And you're going to be that mirror gently. And then giving lots of space for them to feel through that and check that out. Is that what I'm feeling? And this is where you're actually repairing their attachment system. You're starting to help repair what the wound is without coming at them and wanting to get them to, reckon with it in this really direct way. And it's a beautiful way to start to build safety and trust between you. Now, notice I'm not saying now you figure out how to fix them, or now you figure out how to, all you're doing is just mirroring back what you're noticing, which is that's relationship. You're not trying to fix them. You're just being in relationship with them in an attuned way of like, this is what they're needing to start to come into more safety in this place in a safe way. The other thing with avoidance is when we go to voice what's happening for us, it's really important that we do it in a way where we give lots of praise and lots of celebration of how we are feeling met. And then when we make the request, instead of doing it in the way that's really critical, it's very important with people that have avoidance is to do it in a way that is inviting them through a request. So for example, if I go to an avoidant person and say, I really want you to help me feel more cherished, let's just say, or I really want you to help me feel more valued or feel more loved, that will be too abstract and big for them to try to figure out. And it'll likely create a lot of distress inside of them that will then lead to them wanting to withdraw even more. But if you can say, hey, I'm just loving hanging out right now. This is feeling so good. And I really liked having that meal earlier. And no, it would feel just like even better. I'm wondering if you could come over and rub my back for a moment. Or I'm wondering if you could come and hold my feet for me. I'm wondering, could you just tell me a couple things today that I offered you that were helpful for you or that were good for our home? It's like giving them very direct guidance as to what the thing would be. And here's the thing. I used to be annoyed by that because I used to think, well, he should know or they should know. But what I didn't understand is that, especially if someone has avoidant history or avoidant tendencies, when you give them really direct, well, first of all, for all of us, it's our job to teach our partner what we need to feel loved. But secondly, if we can help our avoidant partner by telling them very specifically what we're wanting without accusation or criticalness or anger, we're giving them the roadmap. We're giving them the roadmap nobody ever gave them. And what I have found in my relationship with Mike is he has taken that roadmap and he has ran with it. And he now does those things for me all the time without me asking. But at first, it was a lot of me making requests and doing it in a really safe, relational way that is playful and relational, not accusatory. And in past relationships, and at the beginning of Mike and I's relationship, I could go not as much with Mike. There's been moments with Mike, but in past relationships, I could get really critical, and it didn't lead to the person wanting to show up for me more and more and do the things, right? It led to them wanting to do less and less, or feeling overwhelmed, or, because really all of us want to be able to feel where we're winning and what we're doing well. And also all of us, we need to feel that being acknowledged for what we're offering in order to offer more. And then even more so for the person who is avoidant, they're going to need to know that it's something doable and that they can accomplish, that they're going to actually be able to accomplish. And in this way, with an avoidant partner, when I said, how to invite your avoidant partner in, is if you think about it like this, instead of like coming towards them to like call them out, you're actually like enticing them in slowly. It's like a dance of seduction. It's like a relational seduction, just very carefully seducing them in, very gently inviting them to come into your space and to come into that connection. And it is our job too, I want to say, to do that, because all of us have to learn about what each other needs to relate, to feel safe in relationship. And we all have different needs and ways that we need that. And for people that have avoidance, they need slowness, they need goodness, they need proper mirroring of what's happening for them. They need proper mirroring of what they're doing well. And they need you to show that you want to relate with them, right? You can really see with avoidance if their partner is always frustrated and annoyed, and it's like feeding their inner story that there's something wrong with them, that they're not enough, that their partner doesn't want to connect with them. So even though you're saying, I want to connect with you, connect with me, what you're embodying actually is so much anger and frustration at them that they now are getting feedback of the opposite. And so we want to like get a little playful. I've been learning some really fun ways to entice, like if Mike's avoidant part comes up a little bit, to like get playful with him and get a little sexy with him, or get a little, what would help him want to come over and connect a little more. And I notice the more that I can embody that, then the quicker and easier it is for him to move through those avoidant layers. And, and I can say that for me with my money piece is if Mike can walk in and just be like excited about his own money and be talking about his own money wins and be talking about, our money together, Courtney, instead of coming at me like, what's happening with your money? If he can embody that and then mirror back to me any way that I am able to share, or I am able to do something in a good way, or I am able to, then I naturally want to move towards him. I want to go share. I want to go, but I need a lot of slowness. I need a lot of care. I need a lot of positive invitation. And so I want to get into the part that might be like, I just imagine there's like this part in all of us that's like, but wait a minute. And this was the bonus I talked about. that sounds like a lot of work for me as the partner, right? This is something I hear from so many people in sessions, and this is something I can relate to, that feeling. I'm doing so much work. This is so much work. And so first of all, what I want to say is it can feel that way because we're having to be so careful and cautious and attuned. But again, it's not your job to then take that and fix them, or to then take that and keep holding their hand in things. You're just meeting them halfway. You're taking the ingredients, you're meeting them halfway with good ingredients. They have to move the other 50%, right? So the reality is that they then have to want to learn about themselves in some way. Or when you start mirroring things back to them, they have to want to be like curious about that. And then they have to kind of decide, oh yeah, I am going to move towards. So you're not moving past your 50%, but you are taking responsibility to do the 50% with the ingredients that are actually going to help your partner. And then they're the one that is going to have to make the other movement. One of the things that was a game changer for me in understanding is there would be all these times where I would feel like, oh, this can feel at a balance, Like, so for example, if Mike's in an avoidant place and I'm not, I'm more in anxious or secure. And I'm like the one that's reaching towards, I'm the one that's inviting us to problem solve. I'm the one that's coming up with ideas. It can feel like, well, I'm doing all the work, right? But then there was this like aha of like, wait a minute, I might be holding that, but on the other side, if Mike is able to move through the amount of stress and distress and avoidance to be sitting there next to me and wanting to find a way through it, even though he might not be able to add a whole bunch of words or ideas, but he's doing it. He's sitting there. He's trying to reach through. That is him. Like, that is him. We are both putting in effort. But sometimes the effort looks different because we have different patterning and we have different struggles that we're trying to move through. And so whenever I'm in that moment where I'm, okay, Courtney, like, go slow and move towards and offer a reflection to him about what you're noticing. I'm in that. And then I feel that part come up in me that's like, oh, why am I having to work so hard? Why am I having to do so much? And that part that can come up, I just say, notice for a minute, how hard do you think Mike is working right now in himself, just even to be sitting there, or just even to be trying to find a way here somehow? And then I feel into that, right? It could be so easy for him right now to just leave or get out, get out of here, or to not care or not come back or not, but he's not. He's feeling through it. He's doing the work to just sit there with me, and really noticing all the ways that he's doing his work for us to find our way through that. And that's really important. So important. Yeah, to really see what the reality is. It's a lot more work inside for the person who is avoidant to connect. It's a lot more work for them to get to the point where they can say words or share what they're feeling, and so if they do, that is a huge contribution. That is a huge statement of their love. That is a huge statement of their care. And we need to be able to receive and see that. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say about that is sometimes it does mean that we can be doing more work, or in that particular space or that particular place, we're having to really work to find the connection. And in relationship, there will be ebbs and flows. And there will be, like, each of you will have different needs and different ingredients you need. And we have to sort of allow ourselves to understand that this is what's needed. If you are choosing to be in relationship with this person and you're choosing not to leave, this is what's required to connect with this person. And you have to go into that and embrace it fully for it to work. But if you do it and you're resentful, or if you do it and you're frustrated, if you choose to stay, but then you're just mad at them for having that attachment style, that will degrade the relationship and it won't lead to the connection that you're wanting. And so this is the invitation for maturing, right? Is actually learning what's needed for your avoidant person to feel more safe and to come into connection. So thank you for listening. Whew, I can't believe I was able to do a podcast on that. That shows me how far I've come in my journey. And I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you can share it and spread it around to your friends and people that you think that this would be helpful for. Please, if you found this helpful, hop down, give us a 5-star rating, make a comment. It's really helpful for us to help build our podcast and spread the word of sacred relationship. And thank you so much for all of your care and support.